round of applause for our scout group who've kept a vigil over the last 12 hours, so thank you for that, scouts. Good morning everyone and welcome to the 2021 Anzac Day Dawn service, and a special welcome to all our dignitaries, boys and girls, mums and dads and the whole community. It's a wonderful turnout. To think 12 months ago we were acknowledging this most important days of all days in our great country in different ways, and it's just fantastic that we can be out tonight to pay our ultimate respect on Australia's most important day. When I reflect on Anzac Day each year, you're reading more and more stories, and just a brief one that had a really big impact on me for a lot of years regarding Ron Barassi, an icon of the great game of Australian rules football, and to read the devastation about the loss of a young boy's father at the age of 5. Ron Barassi Sr. was a rat of Tobruk, and he died on the battlefield. And just even 80 years later, the grief in Ron Barassi, and he said that he was living with his uncle at the time of World War II, and him and his mother were informed via a telegram of the loss of a husband and a father. And yet Ron Barassi's gone on and lived such a successful life because of his gratitude and respect for what his father did. And a little extract, he said he thinks about his dad's absence more and more through the years. Made a trip to the grave almost 40 years ago. He'd always dreamt about visiting his dad's grave over the years, and his wife Cheryl talked him into it in 1984. He said he didn't really remember anything that he said, but I do know that I said, "Dad, I love you," when we stood by that grave. He's always been a hero to me. I had thought about trying to investigate bringing him back to Australia, but I think if he had anything to say about this matter, he wouldn't want to have come back. I reckon he would have wanted to stay with his mates. And I think that sums up a lot about Anzac Day and the sacrifice. I also think about the history of this beautiful cenotaph and memorial, and each year it just grows in stature. It was silent last year, as we know, but I think this morning when I wake up about Cameron Baird and his parents on this day, reflecting 101,000 people that have made the ultimate sacrifice for this great country. And the day that Cameron Baird's mum and dad came to this memorial, and our school captains were waiting with a wreath, and they said, "Mr. and Mrs. Baird, could you please place a wreath on your son's plaque that sits proudly at the reflective pond?" So I think those two strong symbols reflect and represent 101,000 people that made the ultimate sacrifice, all current serving ADF personnel, and we certainly pay our tribute and our respect today. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce and welcome Mr. Wes Ridgway, our President of the Doreen RSL. Thank you, Wes.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning, veterans, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and welcome to the Doreen and Mernda Community Anzac Day Dawn service for the year 2021. On this day, Australians and New Zealanders, both at home and overseas, will stop to commemorate Anzac Day. We will never forget the Anzac Day of 2020, a day made no less significant by the need to commemorate from home, separate yet united. But as we look towards today, we began to see an Anzac Day full of possibility, and it's fantastic to see so many community members come out and commemorate such an important part of our military history. And I thank you for your dedication. April 25 is of course the anniversary of the day Australian and New Zealand troops landed on Gallipoli in 1915. However, this event in isolation doesn't seem enough to make this date significant. Gallipoli was not the first time Australians had been in battle, and it was by no means an outstanding success. Gallipoli was not even an Australian battle, for we landed and fought alongside troops from New Zealand, Britain and France. So why have we chosen April 25? What made Gallipoli different for Australia was that it was the first major battle we Australians fought as a nation. Soldiers from every state of the new federated Australia volunteered and fought. What seared itself into our national soul was the sheer scale of casualties. Gallipoli lasted 8.5 months. In that time, 7,600 Australians and 2,500 New Zealanders were killed, whilst 24,000 were wounded. Gallipoli was a battle we lost, and people still ask why we celebrate defeat. The answer is, I believe, that in commemorating Anzac Day, we never set out to celebrate victory. Had we wanted to, we had plenty of other opportunities in our military heritage. So April 25 is not only about military victory, is not about military victory. As people, we chose a day when loss of war scarred the conscience of a young nation. The loss was felt across the whole community, and it was a tragedy we can all associate with. Now let's think about the term Anzac. If you think about it, Anzac is not a battle. Anzac is not a place. Anzac is a collective noun for a group of people. Thus, Anzac Day gives us as a nation the opportunity to think as individuals, ordinary Australians serving the nation in times when we, as a democracy, have seen our land and interests threatened to such a degree that it has been necessary for us to go to war. We think of those who served, those who joined together to make the formidable fighting and support force that Australia was and still is proud of. We salute their fellowship and courage. We think of the families, those who stayed behind. We salute their endurance and strength. We think of the prisoners and the wounded and those that still suffer today. Above all, on Anzac Day, we honour those who died for us, for our nation, Australia, and our peace. Anzac Day is a great Australian and New Zealand tradition. It is celebrated all over the nations and wherever Australians are overseas. It is our day. A day to remember with affection the courage of people and the value of friendship. To honour the dead and to acknowledge those who still suffer from the effects of war. We do not celebrate victory or glorify war. We celebrate the human spirit, the spirit of the Anzacs. In closing, I would like to ask you all on this Anzac Day that you honour the fallen, you cheer the survivors, care for the wounded, and reach out to a friend. Thank you.
We welcome Doreen War Memorial Roll Call, read by the students from Doreen Primary School, Nivedita, Riley and Isabella.
J. Cornwall, 7227, 13th Australian Battalion Military Medal. D.W. Wilson, Alice Wilson, E.M. Wilson, CCMC.
J. Giller, C. Golding, 1553, 56th Australian Infantry Battalion. C. Hicks, who made the supreme sacrifice. A. Jeffrey, 2439, 48th Australian Infantry Battalion. D. Lang, A. Lang, 19530, 8th Australian Field Artillery Brigade, Military Medal, who made the supreme sacrifice. W. Limmer, who made the supreme sacrifice. P. McHugh.
P. Nelson, C. Reid, 4240, 2nd Australian Infantry Battalion, Military Medal. H. Reid, who made the supreme sacrifice. A. Smith, who made the supreme sacrifice. J. Turnbull. W. Thorogood, who made the supreme sacrifice. S. Verso. A. Verso.
Thank you, students from Doreen Primary, very powerful. Welcome to the microphone for the Anzac Day address, the Federal Member for Kiln, Mr. Rob Mitchell. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Jason. To acknowledge the traditional owners of the land at which we meet and pay my respects to others past and present. To acknowledge our veterans, our families and our current and former serving ADF members. And ladies and gentlemen, on the 20th of January 1961, President John F. Kennedy stated the immortal words, "Ask not what you can do for your country. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." These words rang true then as they do today. Today we gather to remember, to commemorate and honour the men and women of our ADF. Today, I proudly wear the medals of VX 39234, my grandfather. We come to honour generations who have, who do and who will do what they can for their country. The Anzac legend has helped define us as Australians. It embodies the characteristics to which we hold dearly. Determination, courage, compassion, resourcefulness, just to name a few. We do not come to glorify war, nor to celebrate the victories over our enemies. Even victory can be hollow. We reflect on the chapters of war. We remember the men and women who gave all, those who returned and those who didn't. The brave men and women who have said farewell to their families, their friends, who joined theatres of war in unfamiliar and unkind lands. Those who gave their all for us. We come to remember these ordinary persons and pay tribute to them, who put freedom for others before their own interest. As Paul Keating said, the lessons was that they were not ordinary. These soldiers and sailors and nurses, those who taught us to endure hardship, to show courage, to be bold as well as resilient, to believe in ourselves and stick together. Those who created the legend through their story of sacrifice, bravery and commitment. They remind us to think about how we build a better understanding of what it means to be an Australian, to have a deeper faith in ourselves and cherish our democracy and the opportunities before us. We remember that behind every Australian who went to war there was a family who waited anxiously for their return, a family which has stood by them, who supported them and who loved them with all their hearts. Now, thankfully, a great many Australians have no personal experience of war, no way of knowing the anguish of enforced separation, or the greater grief of separation will never end. So a simple request to you is this. Here in our midst are men and women who have served and continue to serve. Take the time to thank them. For what they gave in days gone past has given us the freedoms of today, lest we forget.
Thank you, Rob. Laurimar Primary School captains, Max Davison and Holly Carr, significance of Anzac Day.
On the 4th of August 1914, Australia, as part of what was then the British Empire, went to war. With other countries of the Empire, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa and India, Australia joined with Great Britain to fight Germany and her allies. Turkey was one of Germany's allies. At that time, Australia was a new nation, less than 14 years old, and for the first time, people from all over the country came together to form an Australian army. The first Australian imperial force of 30,000 men sailed for overseas in November 1914. On April 25, 1915, most of these Australian men who were later named the Anzacs landed at Gallipoli. Waiting for them on the cliffs above the beach landing area were 62,000 well-positioned and heavily armed Turkish soldiers. During the first 2 weeks of battle, 5,000 of our Australian men were killed or wounded. Imagine what it was like for those men who landed at Gallipoli. Imagine what it would be like to live out in the open on the side of a cliff enduring long nights of biting frost or searing heat. Imagine what it would be like to sleep in metre-deep muddy trenches. Imagine what it would be like to endure the long days of scrambling over cliffs, dodging shellfire and skin-tearing claws of barbed wire. Imagine suffering long stretches of time, being driven mad by the scorching heat, relentless toil and the terrible thirst that comes with lack of water and lack of shade. Imagine what it would be like to be weakened by inflamed sores, wounds, sickness and disease. This is what Australia's young soldiers did for 8 months, from the 25th of April 1915 until the 20th of December 1915. Most of those soldiers were only a few years older than our grade 6 students. Some were boys, some were men. They were ordinary people who found themselves doing extraordinary things in a situation that is very hard for any of us to truly understand. They were the brothers, fathers, sons, family and friends of ordinary people who were left at home to worry about their safety and welfare.
During their time in Gallipoli, the soldiers advanced to further than more than 1 kilometre inland. Those who lost their lives at both sides were appalling. The 50,000 Australians who fought in Gallipoli Some 8,706 were killed and 18,235 were wounded. Although the British Empire did not win the campaign, the battle at Gallipoli gave Australia a new pride. The army had not failed. It had faced its horrors of war, the pain, the discomfort, and the fear with courage and determination. There developed among those Anzacs at Gallipoli were a strong scene of mateship and tradition of all putting the welfare and our mates and the team ahead to personal comfort and safety. The battle on the shores of Gallipoli was one of thousands of battles taking place during World War I. During those terrible 5 years, almost 60,000 Australians were killed. Today we remember all the men and women who have put the Australian service uniform and represented this beautiful country with pride and courage. We remember those who fought in Gallipoli and in the Middle East, in places like East Timor, Bougainville, Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Laos. We remember the men and women who carried the Anzac spirit of mateship, compassion, courage, and good-humoured resilience. We give thanks to those soldiers who stopped the invasion of Australia during World War II. General Peter Cosgrove, the former Dennis Force chief, said Anzac Day is not about glorifying war, it's about acknowledging the Anzac values that are at the core of Australianness and rededicating ourselves to qualities and our great nation.
Thank you, Max and Holly. Voices of Hazel Glen.
Came from the dream time, from the dusty red soul plains.